Mary LaHammer with Twin Cities PBS here with the story behind the story. Another very busy week in Minnesota politics, precinct caucuses. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But again, ongoing immigration action here, really framing Minnesota politics in this week with precinct caucuses. But begins with the border czar Tom Homan saying a drawdown in troops. Now he talked about 700 troops. Activist groups saying, yeah, that still leaves thousands, as many as 2,000 to 2,300 troops still on the ground. He talked about going down to a normalized force, and that would not be in the thousands. One of the statements I thought would be interesting to walk through, it's not in my story, but again, background, is the Minnesota Council on American Islamic Relations. This is a chapter of the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, said that this limited drawdown of ICE agents in Minnesota is a direct result of sustained public resistance and renewed community organizing against the unconstitutional enforcement practices. And it definitely talked about how this drawdown does not address the broader crisis still facing Minnesota communities and their allegations of unlawful arrests of protesters and intimidation tactics and ongoing lack of transparency of the death of local residents of these protesters and observers during the federal operations. And they talked about the fact that Renee Good and Alex Preddy remain without an independent public investigation and accountability, despite widespread calls for that investigation, and also highlighted the fact that now it's up to 14 prosecutors that have resigned amid concerns tied to really the distrust, erosion of legal ethical standards of people sworn to uphold the law. So really bigger concerns there. We also saw today and this week really this outpouring from the educational community. We saw the governor come out also with Attorney General and stand with superintendents and different folks from schools talking about the impact. We know that many kids and many families are staying home from school. And school administrators were very specific about the role that they are playing now, patrolling outside their schools, and how the stresses and the absences are weighing on schools. So that's part of what you'll see here in a minute on the schools. And then the second half of the piece, I'll pivot and talk about the impact of politics in Minnesota with precinct caucuses this week. So that's kind of some setup, story behind the story, and then I'll debrief and go through precinct caucuses. Let's take a look at the story.
I have announced effective immediately, we will draw down 700 people effective today.
Another promise of a drawdown of federal agents is met with hope and skepticism in Minnesota as a boy with a blue hat and backpack came home after judicial intervention.
These are the people that our children should be around, not masked agents carrying automatic weapons that are pulling them away from their families.
He called the Operation Metro Surge ill-conceived and incompetently implemented. Let me tell you, that's about as powerful a language you're ever going to read in a judicial decision.
School leaders are tired of kids missing and fearing ICE agents patrolling outside classrooms.
No amount of school-based support can undo the trauma caused by federal agents posturing in, on, and near our school properties. Schools must be safe places. They must never become places of intimidation. ICE does not belong in and around our schools, in and around our bus stops. I will continue to be transparent. I will continue to speak up. And I am asking urgently for action. Get ICE out of schools.
They are exhausted. I am exhausted. Every day I see the stress, tears, and fear as they face the uncertainty of each school day. How many kids will be in class that day? And how many will go home to find a parent missing? We're grateful that Liam and his father were able to return home safely, though we know this is just the beginning of the support that he'll need to process this experience that will likely have long-lasting traumatic effects.
Frustration with federal immigration action in Minnesota led to robust, even record turnout for Democrats in precinct caucuses across the state, and a relatively easy win for U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar in the race for governor.
Our state is once again the center of America's heartbreak But I hope my colleagues see that we're also the center of America's courage and hope. Courage and hope when 50,000 people march peacefully in below zero weather. Courage and hope when neighbors are helping neighbors.
Republicans saw decent turnout in a crowded contest for governor, with voters eager to end decades out of statewide office. Speaker Lisa Dameth continues to lead the field.
There is absolutely no daylight between Governor Walz and Senator Klobuchar. There are going to be more of the same. This is going to be a Walz third term, and Minnesotans need and deserve different than what we've experienced.
Her campaign launched a plan to stop the fraud, specifically using her lieutenant governor pick to tackle the issue.
I'll specifically be empowered to really change the culture of government, getting down into the particular agencies and cross agencies to make sure that fraud stops.
But the president and ICE action could be tough issues for Republicans to counter here.
When we look at what President Trump had said as far as making sure that our borders were secure, he's delivered on that. The Biden policies allowed an influx of illegal immigration. The federal law enforcement agents that are here doing the job that they have been asked to do are to make our streets safer.
We're taking a lot of bad people off the street. Everybody should be grateful to that.
Republican Kendall Qualls finished a strong second, going on to the state convention.
There's so much support that 2/3 of the delegate pool are looking for an outsider to lead our state. Not just to attract swing voters, but also to clean up the mess in St. Paul. What we have a choice of candidates, a legislator versus a leader. And we're looking for a political outsider to the leader.
In the DFL U.S. Senate, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan proved popular with the activist base.
Donald Trump and the Republicans have underestimated who we are. These rooms were packed, people are engaged, they are ready to fight back, they are ready to stand up for their neighbor. And I can tell you that democracy is worth fighting for, and Minnesotans know it. So I am jazzed after DFL Precinct Caucuses and so grateful for everyone who turned out tonight.
The more moderate member of Congress, Angie Craig, had to defend her vote on immigration.
Why are you here tonight? Because of the show that we're experiencing together. It's Angie Craig here on caucus night. I'm so excited to meet everybody. I'm not supposed to leave DC when we're in session, but I did anyway. Right after I voted against a single damn penny, even for 2 weeks, to ICE. I have no left for this administration.
Now, much more on Precinct Caucuses. You saw there the competing narrative between the two leading DFL candidates for U.S. Senate, Congresswoman Angie Craig, who came back from D.C. and had some real sharp words there, kind of showing anger, pushing back at some of the immigration issue, which Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan has definitely been using against her in the battle going on between the two of them. Some of the polling so far showing them as the front runners, but also on the Republican side, Michelle Tafoya, former broadcaster, getting in and seen as a real contender as well on the Republican side. We don't have numbers on caucus night. State law only has the gubernatorial contest as a straw poll. So just to explain that, I've had a lot of people asking about why do we only have numbers for the governor's race, because that is prescribed in law. So unofficial, just kind of taking the temperature, the U.S. Senate candidates out there. Now, caucus night told us some things, and we'll start with the DFL because that's where the really big headlines were. And the headline out of Democrats were that Minnesotans turned out in historic numbers, and their narrative were that Democrats jumped into 2026 with packed rooms, ready to organize. The numbers looked at about 30,000 in-person attendees, and this is classrooms, cafeterias, gymnasiums. This is kind of the grassroots start of politics. And anecdotally saying a lot of first-time attendees. One site in particular in Eagan said more than 75% of the attendees were first-time. Lyon County said record attendance for a non-presidential year. Carver County reported lines just as long, if not longer, than when President Barack Obama ran in 2008. That was kind of another high watermark for new attendees and interest. One attendee in Fridley said the line of 100 people waiting to get in. Fillmore County precinct site ran out of chairs due to high attendance. And it's just really a lot of interest, and that is more on the DFL side. The party chair, again, saying it was proof that they'll never stop fighting. A Republican then admitted to me that the DFL numbers are going to exceed Republicans. And Democrats only had one candidate to vote for, and that was Amy Klobuchar. There were about 19%, it looks like, people who voted against Klobuchar. So that is recording kind of a protest vote. Now, on the Republican side, thousands of Minnesotans did turn out there to caucus across the state to make their voices heard. Again, this grassroots democracy. And in their preference poll, strong turnout, widespread enthusiasm is a message from Republicans eager to discuss leadership and policies to move Minnesota forward. Republicans saying that there was thoughtful conversation focused on restoring excellence in education, addressing fraud and waste in government, strengthening public safety, and returning to common sense in state leadership. I was hearing from a lot of my Republican sources on the ground that they did feel like it was kind of a pushback from some of the extremes they'd seen in the past and a little more of the return to more traditional Republican, a little more moderation. The official quote from the Republican Party chair, Alex Plekish, was, quote, "The energy and participation we saw tonight sends a clear message. Grassroots Republicans are engaged, informed, and ready to win. Tonight's turnout and results reflect a party that is united, growing, and focused on the future of Minnesota." I have seen out there at debates, there's a crowded contest for governor, and they thought that would drive turnout where, Democrats just had one candidate on the ballot with Amy Klobuchar. Republicans had several. Lisa Dameth won. Kendall Qualls was close behind. Now, Mike Lindell, who Trump has kind of endorsed, not exactly, not fully, but, is a close ally of him, came in third, looking like all of them will go to that state party convention. There was a thought that that would drive interest in it. It probably did, but, Republicans admitting it's a tough time to be Republican in Minnesota with the immigration action going on and low poll numbers for the president and Republicans in Minnesota, but also a real interest in the Republican Party in finally winning a statewide office, trying to bring some folks back into the party, into some moderation, and trying to win again a statewide office with an open seat. We have an open U.S. Senate seat, an open governor's race. So a lot of interest, and obviously the nation and the world watching Minnesota and what's happening and all the political attention. It's a little bit of the story behind the story, and we'll continue to update you on Almanac and with the legislative session starting up here in February pretty soon. Thanks for watching.